Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. There's a famous story about Dwight L. Moody, who was an evangelist back before Billy Graham. One woman said to him that she didn't like the manner in which he invited other people to know Jesus. Moody replied, "I don't like the way I do it either. How do you do it?" She said, "I don't." Moody then said, "Then I like my way of doing it better than your way of not doing it." This week I am focusing on some Bible characters we have probably all heard of from time to time. In their stories, they each drew close to Jesus or to the action of God surrounding Jesus, but then the Bible story leaves them and we never hear from them again. That always makes me wonder what happened in their lives. And while we all really have is speculation, perhaps we might sometimes see ourselves, and perhaps we might sometimes grow in faith. Today I want to spotlight the Ethiopian eunuch. The story is rich in detail. It actually starts earlier when the 12 disciples decide that they are too busy serving the early Christian community to preach like they should, and so they selected 7 people to serve as deacons to take over serving the community while the disciples then went out and preached. Amazingly, the first thing these deacons did was to go out and preach. Stephen was one of them, and he preached so boldly that he became the first Christian martyr. Another one of these deacons was a man named Philip. As the book of Acts tells it, Philip was carried by the Spirit and was set down beside a road. A chariot was passing by, and it carried the treasurer for the queen of Ethiopia. He had somehow been converted to the Jewish faith and had come to Jerusalem to worship. However, there he found nothing but barriers. You see, he was a foreigner, but more than that, he was a eunuch, made that way in order to safeguard the queen's riches. As a eunuch, he would be immune from any temptation by women that might lead to embezzling funds. The thing was, when you made sacrifice to God, it needed to be an unblemished animal. So in Jerusalem, he was prevented from going to the temple because as a eunuch, he himself was considered blemished. But still, that did not seem to mar his faith. When Philip encountered him, he was reading from the scroll of Isaiah as his chariot went along. Now, it may seem odd to us, but in that day, whenever anyone read, they read aloud, especially if they were reading Scripture. In a time when not everyone could read, reading aloud permitted those around you to benefit from hearing what you were reading. So as Philip saw the chariot passing by, he heard the words of Scripture being read. The eunuch happened to be reading the part of Isaiah that says, "Like a sheep he was led to the slaughter, and like a lamb silent before its shearer, so he does not open his mouth." In his humiliation, justice was denied him. Who can describe his generation? For his life is taken away from the earth. Philip ran alongside the chariot and asked the eunuch, "Do you understand what you are reading?" The eunuch replied, "How can I unless someone guides me?" So Philip got in the chariot with him and described how the Scriptures from Isaiah were talking about Jesus. Finally, the eunuch asked something both powerful and heartbreaking. "Look," he said as they were passing a stream, "here is water. What is to prevent me from being baptized?" In his question, you can hear the heartbreak he must have felt in making the journey all the way from Ethiopia to Jerusalem, only to be denied and prevented from worshiping as he hoped. But Philip knew there was no such barrier for the man's faith in Jesus. They stopped And the eunuch was baptized, and the scripture says the man went on his way rejoicing, while the Spirit carried Philip off to another place to continue his work. What a powerful story. Here in the earliest church, we have a story that tells us that all are welcome in God's family. There were no barriers of nationality, no barriers of skin color, no barriers of gender. Maybe this story has much to say to us today. But then the Bible story leaves that eunuch. Don't you want to know what happened next? Well, we don't know anything, but today there are as many as 51 million Christians in Ethiopia. And the brand of Christianity called the Coptic Church was well established by the early 300s. It makes one wonder if this eunuch went back to his homeland in Ethiopia and began a movement that has grown and continues to thrive today. I'll bet Dwight L. Moody would like his way of telling others about Jesus. The eunuch may well have been left behind, but it looks like he took Jesus with him. So should we. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.